Language's flagship lecture series, which is called the Lawad Confab on National Security. Lawad, of course, is the place that Rashtriya Raksha University is currently based at. My name is Dr. Venkateshwaran, and I am the director in charge of the school. Of course, at the outset, I welcome the university's leadership, Dr. Anand Kumar Tripathi, the Pro Vice Chancellor, and the acting Vice Chancellor currently, Dr. Akshat Mehta, Dean of Academic Affairs. I also welcome our school's partners, Mr. Heblikar, of course, who's been instrumental in organizing this interaction today, and his colleagues from the Institute of Contemporary Studies in Bangalore. Commodore Vasan and colleagues, I'm sure, will join us very soon from the Chennai Center for Strategic Studies. I can see Mr. Shashi Nair is already here with colleagues from the Press Institute of India, Research Institute for Newspaper Development. And we'll also have representatives from the Foundation for Nonviolent Alternatives, New Delhi. All of these are partners of our school in all our research and other related activities. I also take this opportunity to welcome directors of the other schools at RRU who will be joining us very soon. And also the faculty colleagues and students who are trickling in as we speak. As I mentioned, we will also be having senior representatives from the media in attendance today. The conversations in this flagship lecture series will revolve around issues relevant to the major focus areas of our school, that is
I think there's a power issue out there where Dr. Venkateshwaran is sitting. So he has just communicated he'll be joining with another channel very soon.
I hope you're able to hear me now. My sincere apologies. We've had some issues with electricity disruption. So even as the electricity is back, I've reconnected using my phone. And very briefly, just to provide the context of this conversation, I don't need to reiterate to this very knowledgeable audience on the importance of Sri Lanka as India's neighbor. Over the years, India and Sri Lanka have gone on to develop a very comprehensive strategic relationship. Our Prime Minister has very correctly emphasized that a stable Sri Lanka is not only in the interest of India, but for the entire Indian Ocean region. In August 2020, Sri Lanka had announced an India First foreign policy, and this was reciprocated by India's Priority One Defense Partner announcement in February 2021. Subsequently, the Indian Air Force and the Air Chief participated in the 70th anniversary celebrations of Sri Lanka's Air Force in March 2021. During our National Security Advisor, Mr. Dhaval's visit in November 2020, the trilateral maritime cooperation with Maldives, which had last met in 2014, that was upgraded into a maritime and security agreement, from a maritime security agreement, which encompasses all aspects of trilateral security in the truest sense. And now a maritime security secretariat has been established in Colombo. In the recent past, both sides have engaged at the highest levels. Our foreign minister has visited Sri Lanka in November 2019. His Excellency Gotabaya Rajapaksa made his first diplomatic visit as the head of the state to India in November 2019. His Excellency Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa also made his first official visit abroad to India in February 2020. The importance that is assigned to the relations between both countries, I think, can be well acknowledged by the fact that our current ambassador in Sri Lanka, Sri Gopal Bagle, has taken up this assignment straight after his previous assignment in the Prime Minister's office. He took up this assignment in February 2020. And of course, I have already given you a background of Ambassador Moragoda, who has been working very closely with the political leadership in his country. And he has now taken up his assignment in August 2021. As in every relationship, there are also challenges that needs to be constantly addressed. And I only mentioned very briefly before Ambassador Moragoda, of course, takes over. Sri Lanka's economy appears to be going through a difficult time. And India's intertwining with Sri Lanka economically and how it can contribute in this context will be an area of interest. Concerns of terrorism continue to persist for both countries. And more recently, the fishermen issue has appeared to take some prominence in the media. So in this context, we could not have had a more appropriate time and a more appropriate authority to address us today. Under Ambassador Moragoda's leadership, a vision document for taking the bilateral relationship forward has been enunciated. And I now invite His Excellency to address this gathering in the context of that vision document. He has indicated that he'll speak for about 10 to 15 minutes and then would like to have a very open interaction with this very knowledgeable audience. So Ambassador Moragoda, over to you, please.
Thank you, Dr. Venkateshwaran. And I would like to thank the Rashtriya Raksha University and the leadership for providing me with this opportunity. I would also like to thank Mr. Heblikar, whom I have known for many years, and it's a privilege to reconnect again. And of course, Mrs. Satyamurthy, Colonel Hariharan, who have vast experience on the bilateral relationship between Sri Lanka and India, I think your comments would be probably as important or as as valid as probably mine could hope to be. Basically, I would, as I said, as you mentioned, Dr. Venkateshwaran, speak for, I would say, maximum of 10 minutes, and I would like a dialogue, a discussion, because I think that's what matters here, because many people here, many of the individuals here know the relationship, so I don't need to re-emphasize. At the beginning, I found it interesting, somebody, the comment, I think it was Colonel Hariharan who made that China was the elephant in the room. My relationship with the Indo-Lanka connection goes back to when I was a special advisor to Mr. Premadasan. And at that time, or just before that, during Mr. Jayawardana's time, the elephant in the room was the United States. So elephants may keep changing, but our relationship goes on. So I'd like to start basically trying to put into context first our strategy document. The strategy document is a work in progress. So even these discussions today, I would like to see whether I can have more insight, have more comments that we can add to this. This was prepared just before I took over, and now we are revising it, fine-tuning it, so that we can become more relevant. So the idea is that this is a work in progress. When I move on, hopefully my successor would be able to take it over and take it to the next level. So it is not cast in stone. So any comments you may have, any criticisms you may have would be most welcome in the context of the discussion. I always like to have a historical perspective of our bilateral relationship. I like to say that our relationship is defined on one side by the Ramayana and on the other side by Buddhism. 7 millennia is our relationship with Ramayana, and 2 millennia is our relationship with Javi Buddhism. So these two connections make India and Sri Lanka, the relationship, very special. And I believe as the time each of us, as we live through a certain period, we may think this is the most important period in the relationship. But rest assured, when you look at our history, this is definitely not the most important period. We have had ups, we have had downs, and the relationship has gone on. So the strategy document seeks to deal, in one aspect, is how do we build trust? Because there is a trust deficit for obvious reasons. And it has to be a process of building trust. Trust is a two-way, building trust is a two-way process. So there we have looked at 3 stages. The first stage being transactional. There are certain transactions on the table that we need to do and try to build the confidence through that process. Those transactions would have a strategic direction, hopefully. So the next stage would be the strategic relationship. We are trying to work out how do we have a strategic dialogue, how do we get to understand each other better when it comes to strategy. And the last phase is what I have referred to as a special relationship. Now, people ask me often, what do you mean by special relationship? And then I go back again in history to Emperor Asoka. Emperor Asoka trusted Sri Lanka enough, trusted the king of Sri Lanka enough to send his daughter as an emissary. So I consider that to be the basis of a special relationship, trust at that level. So that is the process of evolution that we have to go through. We are at the transactional stage. We have had our ups and our downs in those transactions. We are working our way through that. The nature of our cultures, the nature of our democracies, democracy is untidy. It's never perfect, as you well know. India and Sri Lanka are both democracies. They are South Asian democracies. So through this untidiness of democracy, we have to work out processes to build trust, and the transactions should be, hopefully we will be able to build the trust through that initially. Then we have to go to the strategic and then on to the special relationship phase. For me, interestingly, I would think the most important aspect of the relationship is the people-to-people relationship. If we can get through that, I think the rest will follow. Now, of course, to some of you who are more hard-headed and who would like to see the more strategic end of it, we can discuss that as we go along. But on the people-to-people side, the cultural relationship, I think, is critical, because India and Sri Lanka, I mean, we come from the same gene pool. So that is where our relationship must be built. That's how our relationship must be built. So this document deals with a lot on Buddhism, how we strengthen our relationship through Buddhism, through Buddhist trails, Buddhist exchanges. On Hinduism, there we have looked at many different facets of Hinduism, the Ramayana, which I referred to earlier. Then we are looking at a Shiva Shakti trail relationship, more relevant to the south, a Murugan relationship, a trail relationship. So different ways of culturally connecting. Then we have also referred to some Christian and Islamic links also we are looking at now. Although the Islamic links are not specifically in this report, we have been working on some as well to see how in the South Asian regional context, the people-to-people relationship, the cultural relationship can be strengthened. Then, of course, education, exchanges, the more we can have people going back and forth, the better it will be to build this confidence. I mean, I often think southern Sri Lanka, for example, has a lot in common with Kerala. If we can have school children from Kerala from coming to Sri Lanka on their holidays, and Sri Lankan school children going up to Kerala on their holidays, that could be the basis of an exchange. In fact, we recently appointed a new honorary consul in Kerala, and this is something he is working on to see how we can bring school children across from there, and school children, sort of a reciprocal trips across. With that comes the idea of connectivity. Aviation connectivity is very strong. Of course, pre-COVID, it was very good, but now we need to get up there once the COVID pandemic at least stabilizes at some level. We have to get back to the ferry connections. We have to have the networks to connect. Then with it comes tourism. Before COVID, India was the first, and even now, India was #1 when it came to tourism. Pre-COVID, we were, I think, about our tourists from India were accounted for about 20 to 25% of tourists coming to Sri Lanka were from India. So India is the main market, and that again is part of the people-to-people connection. Then from Sri Lanka, we have pilgrims who go out to the Buddhist sites. We are looking at how we can broaden that, not only focusing on, let's say, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, but even look at other states like Odisha, because there are Buddhist sites right across. So, and even for Gujarat, we have been looking at. So there are, to see how we can work on that. So the people-to-people aspect to me is critical. It is medium to long term, but we will build that. And tourism becomes extremely important, because for our economy, tourism is key. Then comes the broader, I would say, the economic relationship. We are looking at how we can improve the connections in some of the infrastructure-related industries. Ports, obviously, with the recent investment in the West Terminal, which, as you know, went through various incarnations, and from the East Terminal, now finally India has invested in the West Terminal, and that, I think, is the beginning of a very good relationship. It will be, I think, the integration between the two ports will begin with that particular investment with the Adani Group. We could look at the energy sector, which we are looking at now. Sustainable energy possibilities. We have tremendous wind potential in the northeast and northwest of Sri Lanka. They say up to even 5,000 megawatts. There is discussion of the possibility of a cable linking India and Sri Lanka for electricity. And if we focus on sustainable energy, that should be the way forward. Earlier in Sampur, there were discussions for a coal-fired plant. Now that has been replaced with the possibility of a solar farm in the Sampur area, and that those discussions are ongoing. Then comes the petroleum sector. There we have many possibilities. I mean, the joint venture with the tank farm, then integrating, as you know, Indian Oil, Lanka Indian Oil has about 30% of our distribution in Sri Lanka of petroleum is with Lanka Indian Oil. So that relationship could be taken forward. Then further into the exploration phase, to looking at other opportunities as well in that sector. So these are just 3 areas. There are many others. With a vision for India and Sri Lanka to be linked, that Sri Lanka becomes a hub into India, a gateway into India, a sort of a Hong Kong in the economic sense. These are the sort of strategic directions we can go on. The defense relationship the security relationship is at different levels, and I think many of you are experts there. We can discuss that in detail. But one figure I like to mention often is the fact that nearly 700 Sri Lankan students, military students from the Army, Navy, and the Air Force are following courses in India at any given moment, even now. So we are the single largest recipient of scholarships from India for the military training institutes. So there is that basic relationship again, which is built on, again, people to people, military to military, because these are the relationships that will bond our 2 countries in the longer term and which will have a strategic impact as well. Other areas we have spoken of, education, technology, there are many other aspects as well. Basically, I think for me, some like to see the India-Sri Lanka relationship as a glass, let's say, being half empty. In my view, it is 3/4 full. It is this 1/4 that we need to work our way through. So how do we establish trust? How do we establish more predictability, this idea of no surprises? How do we have transparency in our relationship? These are the issues that I grapple with day to day. I think this document gives a strategic direction, a vision direction. Now it's a matter of how do we move in that direction. But I think every one of us participating in this discussion has a role to play in this relationship. It is not up to me as the ambassador or the politicians on this side or for Mr. Gopal Bagle on the other side with the leadership in India. That it's not restricted to that. I think this relationship goes beyond that. And during my short tenure, if I can make a contribution, that's where I would like to make it, to try to broaden this relationship on many fronts so that we are able to engage at many levels, because that's how trust is ultimately built. So on that basis, I have been traveling a fair amount. Just 10 days ago, I was in Durbanga in Bihar at the Madhubani Literature Festival. My wife and I spent 3 wonderful days there as chief guests. And the focus there was on Sita, the symbol of Sita in Ramayana. As you know, that region, the Mithila region, you have Sita was also born in that region. And it was a wonderful set of 3 days because, Sri Lanka was the center of that whole discussion. So we have many, many ways in which we can connect. Earlier, I was in Uttar Pradesh. I visited Ayodhya, again, with the connection between the Asoka Milinda and Ayodhya. The historical relationships are at many levels, and I hope to visit other states. I plan to visit Odisha soon as well. What I feel, in my tenure at least, that's what I would like to see, and that we are trying to set up a consulate in West Bengal. We have got the approval in principle, but of course we have to get the resources together for that. So I think every one of us here has a role to play. So that's why I must thank again Mr. Heblikar for this opportunity, and of course the Rashtriya Raksha University and Dr. Venkateshwaran for having organized it, because more interactions like this will make a difference. So thanks again for the invitation, and I'm available to participate in this discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. I think you've, with your very brief comments, set the ball rolling in terms of certain focus areas, at least from your perspective, that we could emphasize upon. As you have highlighted, we'd like to take this forward with as many questions, comments that Ambassador can take. That was the idea of keeping his initial comments brief, but he's happy to have a free and flowing interaction. And we have a number of experts here, both from within RRU as well as outside. And if you would like to ask any question, there are two ways to do this. One, of course, is just simply to raise your hand and I can come to you, or just drop your comments in the chat section and I could just read them out to the ambassador for him to respond. My request is keep your comments and your questions as much as possible brief so that we can take as many questions, as many inputs as possible. And please kindly introduce yourself because we have an audience here which is from various sections. Who would like to go first, please? Yes, I think it's Abhinav from Usanas Foundation. Abhinav Bhatia is heading. Yeah, Abhinav.
Hi, Dr. Venkat.
Foundation is based in Udaipur. And Abhinav, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Dr. Venkat, for inviting me. And I would like to congratulate the ambassador for giving this nice presentation. It's a very comprehensive presentation, enhancing our understanding of the India-Sri Lanka situation currently. My question is on the counter-terrorism cooperation between India and Sri Lanka. We recently saw, especially after the Easter bombings, that most of the perpetrators and many of them, they visited some parts of India. First point. And second point, especially after the Taliban revival in Afghanistan, the entire South Asia stands at a heightened risk of radicalization. So, I mean, what are the possibilities in this area? What can we do?
Firstly, I think the cooperation at intelligence level, technical level, to my awareness, is very good. It's excellent. I think there are several intelligence experts also in this audience, so I'm sure they could give their views. I think at the strategic level also, there is a level of cooperation. The NSA cooperation, the dialogue on the regional level is something which Sri Lanka supports. And we are very happy and privileged also to have the secretariat located here. India has been supportive of that secretariat, has also expressed interest in strengthening it further. So I think the basic strategic level cooperation and of course the operational cooperation is taking place. In my view, we have to be prepared for, I mean, this is a new era. I mean, clearly you mentioned Afghanistan, that opens out many different new aspects, new challenges. After the Easter Day bombings in Sri Lanka, we have also had to basically redirect, if you will, our intelligence apparatus. And India's cooperation has been extremely important for that as well. Yes, we live in quite a dangerous world. There's no question about it. And I think the strategic level cooperation becomes key. And the leadership India is taking when it comes to the NSA dialogue and then working on from there, I think is very important. And that is something Sri Lanka will support, even to try to expand the participation in that particular group, which is something I think that should be done. So I think India's leadership is important in that context, and I think India is providing that leadership.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ambassador. So I just wanted to tell you that our think tank, Usanas Foundation, is organizing an international conference on the theme of transnational terrorism in 21st century and the global counter-terrorism response. And we have Mr. Rohan Gunratna as a keynote speaker in the second day of our conference.
Very good. He's one of our experts and he heads the Defense Ministry think tank also. That's very good. Excellent.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhinav. I can see that there is one question from Mr. Manika Vasagam, who is from the media with the Navjeevan Express. And he's, again, I think he's raised this issue of the fishermen as being one of the major irritants in the bilateral relationship. And he says that what could be the permanent solution to this, Ambassador? Because many of the fishermen bodies are on Dharna in Tamil Nadu now.
The problem has been, the challenges rather have been around for a long time. And ever since I have started to deal with India in different ways over the last 20 years, this challenge has been there. I always, for purposes of discussion, break it into three aspects as I see it. One is the legal aspect. Clearly, from the legal point of view, there are fishermen poaching on the Sri Lankan side. That's a reality, the law. That's how the law is. Secondly, there is an ecological aspect, because this bottom trawling has created, is basically completely destroying the ecology of that area. And during the war period, these areas were not open for fishing, so therefore, to some extent, the fish were conserved. But now, with peace, these areas have got opened out and bottom trawling is taking place, and there's a lot of ecological damage taking place. The third aspect is the political dimension, the livelihoods dimension. There is an issue, because we have to see how we can work together. We are neighbors. We have to see how we can work together at the political level. So once one accepts the first and the second, the legal aspect and the ecological aspect, we have to now find a way of how we work together. India has been making, there have been different initiatives to try to train and support fishermen to go to do more deep sea fishing from the Tamil Nadu and the South Indian area. Sri Lanka has also been dealing with this. The enforcement aspect of it, there has been a fair amount of consideration given. As to how one can balance this issue. But I think a permanent settlement is going to be the challenge. I think at the moment we have to manage it, and to manage it in a way where one is that we do not destroy the fishery there and the ecology there, and on the other side, when it comes to enforcement, that lives are not lost. So that has been the challenge that we have had. So as I see it in the short term, it is a matter of managing it with understanding on the two sides. That's how I think we have gone along on this. And the longer term, we have to have a strategic goal of trying to, on one, what is already being done, training fishermen, providing them with multi-day trawlers and so on and so forth to do fishing further away. And we have to keep discussing this at the Fishermen's Association level, at the governmental level, because at every level there is dialogue on this subject. But I think the reality is that it is what it is. I think we can't walk away from it. We are neighbors, we have lived together, and this is fish know no boundaries, and fish move around. And fishermen also sometimes probably don't understand boundaries, and that's what it is. But I don't see a short-term solution to this. I think we have to manage this, and leaderships on both sides, both at the national level and the regional levels on both sides, have to do this with a certain level of understanding, because there's much emotion on both sides. In Jaffna, in the north, as you know, there's ongoing, even now there are protests connected with this, and then of course on the Tamil Nadu side as well. So I think there needs to be a certain amount of maturity, and we have to manage it at the moment.
Thank you, Ambassador. We have a number of people who've raised their hands. I'll go one by one. I'll start with Professor Gaur, who's one of our senior members in the Rashtriya Raksha University. He's the director of the Forensics School. Professor Gaur, if you could please kindly ask your question, sir.
Good afternoon, sir, Ambassador, sir.
Good afternoon.
I do not have anything to do with forensics when I'm asking you this question. Sir, I just ask that do we have some collaborative excavations going on in Sri Lanka as far as archaeological work is concerned? And do we have regular cultural exchange programs going on between the two countries? That's all, sir.
Cultural programs, yes. Archaeology at a limited level, yes. I think we could do much more on this. And I think it's an area I would also like to concentrate on, that we work together jointly. There is a lot we can do. In fact, I visited the Delhi Museum several times to see how we can get collaboration between the museum in Delhi and our museum here, because you have a lot of, especially on the Buddhist section has a lot of archaeological artifacts connected to Buddhism, and we could have some collaboration there. And even at a later level, your Museum of Modern Art is a fantastic museum, and we are trying to see what we can do to collaborate with that, because so there are at different, again, we need to have a multifaceted relationship. Then there is another aspect of it. There are certain animals which have, I think I'm going off, but maybe more into the forensics here, but there are some animals that are extinct here that you may have there. For example, one animal is the gaur. It's a kind of a buffalo type of animal, and we notice that we appear to have had the gaur here years ago, and it's no longer here. But you have it in the south of India, and what I've been trying to encourage are for experts to work together on this to see, were those animals here as well, and that in that part also I think there is a lot we can do. But I think it's an area we can do a lot more in.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Gaur sir and the ambassador. We have Mr. Ramakrishnan who would like to ask a question. Please go ahead, sir, and kindly introduce yourself.
Yes, this is Ramakrishnan from Chennai. I'm a journalist, and having worked in Sri Lanka for 1.5 years, my question is in reference to the mission objective 1.4. This is with regard to the repatriation of externally displaced persons. As you should be knowing, there are about 100,000 refugees, what we call refugees. Okay, they are living in Tamil Nadu. 65,000 are in what government supported camps, and then 35,000, around that figure, are outside the camps, what they call non-camp refugees. So what steps have you taken with regard to the voluntary repatriation? Of course, it's a very complex matter, because at least 1/3 of them, as I see, have been born and brought up and even got married. So this 1983, most of them came here around 1990. So this is the situation. So any progress or any update with regard to the voluntary repatriation of people who are living here?
As you rightly said, it is complex. In fact, of the finance minister, Mr. Basil Rajapaksa, when he visited Delhi this time, he discussed this issue as well. And it's something which he is personally interested in. He mentioned the fact that anybody who wanted to come would be welcome, and the fact that return would be welcome, and that he was also going to look once again as to how the accommodation, how we have to work, as you know, with UNHCR and other organizations as well. He has taken an interest in this matter, and I think probably in the coming months you will see also more focus on it. But it's an area which he personally himself on his own took up, in fact, when he visited Delhi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Himatri, would you like to ask your question now?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Please
Good evening, sir.
Good
I'm
evening.
Madhu Das from Criminology and Behavioral Science School. So my question is, how far is bilateral relations between Sri Lanka and India impactful in the context of SAARC?
SAARC is complex because, to some extent, okay, let's put it this way. I'm going to answer this more personally. I am not a great believer. Maybe I come from a more business background, more political background, and for me, what works, works, and what doesn't work, doesn't work. And I see our relationship as being bilateral. So my focus would be to look at the bilateral relationship, how do we strengthen it? SAARC is a noble objective, it's the vision I understand, but there are many challenges within it. And then there is an alternative, not necessarily an alternative paradigm, but there is another paradigm in BIMSTEC. Sri Lanka, as you know, is now chairing BIMSTEC. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we were not able to do as much as we would have liked to do. And I think by the end of the first quarter, the BIMSTEC meeting, I think, is due to take place end of March now, and the new chairman or the chairperson would be Thailand, or a country. But how to disentangle SAARC, I don't have a solution there. I mean, and how Sri Lanka can do it, I don't know. The Secretary General of SAARC is one of our most eminent diplomats. He's a close friend as well, Mr. Asalavirakorn. And I think I'll leave that challenge to him. He's trying very hard to do it. I think he was even in Pakistan last week. He has been traveling across. He was in Delhi earlier. For me, what works. It's the art of the possible. I'm a politician by background, and the art of the possible for me is the bilateral side, and that's what we have to work on. I don't think I answered your question, but that's my perspective.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Good question, Ambassador. Thank you. We'll have Mohit Sharan. Please introduce yourself and ask your question.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Mohit Charan. I'm from RRU. So my question is, we see a growing increase in the presence of extra-regional powers in the Indian Ocean region. The Chinese too are planning an Indian Ocean fleet. So how does Sri Lanka look at it, sir?
For us, you see, if you look at our history, going back to ancient history as an island, I always say our opportunities came from the sea, the challenges came from the sea. I mean, we were most recently under the Portuguese, the Dutch, and the British for different periods of time. And before that also, we have had our challenges with different nations. In this new situation, you have the basic environment now with the Indo-Pacific, with Belt and Road, all these competing paradigms working. I think we have to look at ourselves. What are we wanting out of this? I mean, we want to develop our nation. We want to provide a better future for our children. And how do we do that within that? In that way, we are blessed. I mean, the fact that we are located south of India, fast growing, one of the fastest growing and possibly will be the fastest growing economy in the world. How do we work with India on that? Then how do we link to the rest of the world, whether it's China or the United States or Europe? How do we deal with that? That's a challenge we face. And we are a small nation. And always our relationships with everybody, including India, is asymmetrical. We know that. I mean, we can't call the shots at the table, but then we have to maintain our dignity at the table as well. So that is the challenge. Now, we can discuss what is going on in the Indian Ocean, and my own personal work through my foundation. We are doing a lot of work on that through the Pathfinder Foundation as well. But as far as Sri Lanka is concerned, for us, it is the fact that we see opportunity and we see challenges. So how do we manage the challenges and get the opportunities out of that? So I'm not, again, maybe not directly answering your question. If you want to focus it better, more, rather, please do so. But my own view is, for a country like ours, we can't change what is going on. Those are realities. I mean, we don't have that clout to do that. But we have to understand and be agile and make use of that to take our country forward. That's how we have to see it. Sometimes we may do things right. Other times we may do it wrong. As long as we learn from our mistakes, I think we are making progress. Sometimes in democracies, we don't learn from our mistakes. That happens too. I mean, that's unfortunate, but that happens. That's democracy. But that's the journey for us, as I see it.
Thank you, Ambassador. I go now to Dr. Datesh Parulakar, please.
Yeah, thank you. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Venkat. Thank you to the ambassador as well for a very crisp and a very incisive presentation. I'm Dr. Datesh Parulekar from the School of International Area Studies here in Goa University. I've also been recently appointed as a visiting faculty, of course, at the School of International Cooperation, Security and Strategic Languages. I have two questions for the ambassador. Since you talked about your strategy document, and given how critical the oceans are from a sustainable development standpoint for both India and Sri Lanka, does the idea of blue economy blueprint figure within your strategic document for a futuristic trajectory of cooperation between Delhi and Colombo? And if so, if there could be 2 or 3 points that you could probably bring up in the context of blue economy framework for our cooperation. The second is in the context of this whole notion about your debt crisis that you currently have, and you're trying to pare down your debt. Now, as you look to diversify your risk and bring in more countries to invest in Sri Lanka, would you be open to the idea of India investing in Sri Lanka with collaborative partners like Japan and the United States? And would that be something you'd be comfortable with, or would you prioritize individual bilateral cooperation projects from India into Sri Lanka? Thank you very much.
On the first, I mean, as an island, the blue economy has to be our main economy. We have not exploited it sufficiently. There is no question about that. When it comes to collaboration with India, I mean, immediately there are areas where we will have to collaborate. One is that we have now made our proposals for the seabed margin to the Law of the Sea Commission that is sitting on that in New York, and we will obviously look forward to working with India on that aspect of it. I think in the field of research, we can do a lot together with India. And we need to work on that. We have mentioned oceans in this document as well, if you would have noticed it. It's personally an important area for me as well, because my father, who is 90 now, I mean, his life has been the Law of the Sea Conference. He was the chairman of the Seabed Committee of the Law of the Sea Conference. And he was also the main lawyer for the Kachativu settlement when it took place. So he keeps on reminding me at the age of 90, when I went to Delhi also, he said, this has to be your priority. So when we did our job descriptions, there is a separate person in the High Commission also. We have given a job description to work on looking at collaboration possibilities between India and Sri Lanka on the oceans. When it comes to the other question, yes, it's an area we want to work a lot on. That is Japan-India collaboration in Sri Lanka. As you know, there were some experiments or some efforts made which were not that successful. We would like to work more on that. And that is something I have had discussions both in Delhi with my Japanese colleague there, even with the colleagues here. The Sri Lankan government has as well, how India and Japan can collaborate. Sectors, for example, sustainable energy is a very clear area which both countries can collaborate. Some of those projects I mentioned, even solar, it can be done. Ports, it can be done. Unfortunately, on the West Terminal, East Terminal project, it was not possible, but it is something we have to explore further. Telecom, we can do that. There are many sectors where it can be done. Japan has been one of our biggest donors, the oldest friends when it comes to economic cooperation. And I think India and Japan working together is a very important aspect. And that's something we would support very much. When it comes to other countries, fine. I mean, if there are other collaborations possible. But India and Japan, we have been trying to focus on specially. And if that works, there could be other models as well.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Datesh, for those questions. I will now move to Mr. Hariharan, of course. Sir, and hold hand. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Ambassador. I think for publishing the document in open media and discussing it, laying bare your goals, what you aspire to. So, if you take a look at it, I see one aspect is building better relations with the states. Is one of the aspects you have mentioned. The Tamil Nadu had been the vital link in Sri Lanka-India relations. I am not meaning the political aspect, but there is umbilical relations between Sri Lanka and Tamil Nadu, which cannot be wished away by both sides. So logically, when you set about making this kind of strategic statement of, you have mentioned, turning the transactional relationship into a strategic relationship. When we are looking at it, the confidence building is one of the essential things. So given your priorities, I am sure everything cannot be achieved in a 5-year term even. What would you like to be the priority in confidence building? Because there are issues which cannot be wished away. One is the ethnic amity in Sri Lanka as a direct bearing on the India is generally the federal form of government. So it's the union government. So how would you go about doing this? I would like to know, because this is a thing tangible. I am, for all practical purposes, I think it is foolish to have a confrontation relationship, because it's a traditionally cooperative relationship. So how would you prioritize building this kind of relationship? Because you have got a whole what you call a table full of things to do. I hope I am getting you.
Yes. No. I think on the Tamil Nadu relationship, we are working on it. I mean, as time goes, you will probably see that we are trying to do some things there. But you talked of the ethnic issue, which I mean, this is again personal. I come at this with a lot of history, as you know. I was one of the negotiators for the peace process. I dealt with the LTT over that period. Before that, even during Mr. Premadasa's time, I had certain exposure. Bringing that all in, for me, reconciliation in the post-war context is an extremely important aspect of this whole journey. Not because of Tamil Nadu, because of Sri Lanka. We need that reconciliation. In a democratic process, I mean, you see it in India, you see it here. This is complex. When you have different identities competing, tensions that are there. I think my view is that we have to work out a model internally, how we are going to live as Sri Lankans. And that is what the president is trying to do at the moment. And I think there is an ongoing discussion in it. I think the fact that the president, I mean, if he probably was able to do it from the beginning, progress would have been more. But unfortunately, the pandemic got in the way of this whole process. But I think this internal discussion that is going on has to first be concluded. We have to find, as Sri Lankans, how are we going to live together? Then we can look at the external dimension of this. Clearly, there is a frame. I mean, the 13th Amendment is a frame that is there. Now, I have expressed my own views about the 13th Amendment. I have said not about the 13th Amendment, but about the Provincial Council. That we should maybe look at other paradigms, maybe devolving power further down the line as well, and restructuring the upper levels. But I don't think that is going to happen. I think what we will be having a situation now is to see how can we work within what we have and achieve that reconciliation. So I think we have a lot of work to do here. And over the last 2-3 months, you would have also seen the president has spoken about it. Professor Peiris has spoken about it. Professor Peiris is doing a lot of work on it, and he's somebody with a lot of experience in this matter. I mean, he and I also worked together on the peace process at the time, but he goes back even earlier on the constitutional side. This is a matter which is being discussed, which we have to find our way. If there was a quick solution, if there was an overnight solution, we would have found it. And during the peace process of 2000 and 2001, I think if there was a settlement in that context, that was the opportunity. But that opportunity was also, they were not reciprocated at that time. So today, I think the new frame that the president is trying to build, I think we have to give that time. But this idea that overnight we can find solutions, it has not worked. I mean, every government that has been elected since 1977 has been trying to find a solution to this problem. So if they, and every leader has, President Jayawardena has, President Premadasa has, Mr. Kumaratunga has, Mr. Wickramasinghe had, Mr. Rajapaksa tried, Mahinda Rajapaksa. Now Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa is trying. So I think the patience is required as well, on all sides. And also sincerity of engagement, that is important. And not to be wedded maybe to maybe old dogmas as well, be willing to look afresh at a situation. So that's where we are. Again, I'm not, I think, answering your question fully, but that is where I stand on this issue.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I think if I could just move forward a little more with and this is related to what Mr. Hariharan asked was, and you spoke about the reconciliation process within Sri Lanka, Ambassador. Obviously, you need conditions of stability and peace for this reconciliation process to work more smoothly. And in that context, if you could tell us a little bit about how do you see, the conflict is long over, but you played a very crucial role during those years. How do you see the current situation? If you could give us your perspective, Ambassador, in terms of any possible chances of instability returning, or conditions of peace still continuing to be strengthened. Your perspective on that, Ambassador.
No, my sense is, I mean, Sri Lanka has many challenges. The main challenge for us now is economic. And I think that is what this government, as well as any future government in this country, will have to face for the next 4 or 5 years. We will have to go through economic restructuring. The pandemic basically surfaced issues that were already there, the underlying weaknesses in our economy. The fact that since independence we have been spending more than we have been earning, that we have been the economy was not efficient. All those inefficiencies came up through the pandemic, and now we basically have to face the reality of that. Now that applies across the board in the context of reconciliation as well, because the North and the East are very underprivileged areas. The Deep South is as well. So I think our initial focus, if I were looking at it, again I speak on myself here maybe, is how do we get the economy right? And for that, India has a crucial role to play, and I must also express my thanks and appreciation to both Minister of External Affairs and Minister of Finance of India, both ministers who spent a lot of time. Mrs. Sitaraman herself has taken a great interest in our issue, and so has Dr. Jayashankar. They spent a lot of time when our finance minister was there trying to understand in detail the issues and how India could help to begin the process of restructuring. So I hope in the coming months we will work with India on that. We did identify 4 pillars of involvement potentially for India, as you would have seen from the statement that was issued after the meetings with the finance minister. The first pillar has to do with the most immediate aspect, that is food and medicine support for that. The second pillar was to do with petroleum and cooperation in that sector, including credit for petroleum and helping India, Sri Lanka to be provided with the adequate security in this sector in petroleum, and also the collaboration when it came with the tank farm as well. Third area was to help to bolster our reserves. And the fourth area, I think, which is a most critical area, and that is to do with investment. Increasing investment from India to Sri Lanka, investment and tourism, because that is going to be the long-term sustainable way of taking our economy forward. In that context, the next week on the 9th of January, Finance Minister Basil Rajapaksa will be traveling to Gujarat for the Vibrant Gujarat meeting, where we are having a private sector delegation going out there as well. We will also have tourism presence as well from Sri Lanka, and that would be the beginning of the activation of the fourth pillar to try to encourage investment to come in. And what I'm also hoping is that this investment will be not only in the south, but in the north and the east as well, because tourism is one sector which hopefully will help us to pull out of this, and Indian tourism becomes important. So as of now, the immediate priority for us has to be to get our economy, stabilize it and take it forward. If we are able to do that, we will be able to address many of the other issues. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't mean we ignore everything else. We need to work on those things, but we have to get our priorities right at the moment, because the economy is key now, because there is a crisis and we need to face that.
Thank you, Ambassador. We have again some questions here. I think I'll ask Hiral Desai to identify herself and then maybe ask a question briefly.
Hi, this is Hira Desai. I represent Ed for All. Thank you, Mr. Heblikar, for giving us this opportunity as well. Respected Ambassador, our question is for the bilateral ties between India and Sri Lanka. How important is education going to play as a role? We talk about exchange programs, all that is fine. But apart from that, what are the things that we would be looking at from an education perspective? Because when we're talking of, growing the economy, again, education plays an important role for the demography that we need to focus on.
That is true. I mean, we have, at a very basic level, we have a large number of students studying in India, both on the technology side and interestingly, even in fine arts. Quite a number in fine arts, some also learning language. So that component is there. But something maybe a little more unusual, or something that is an interesting model to follow, would be what HCL is doing in Sri Lanka. HCL has now started to do some very interesting software development work here. Just not outsourcing, but actual software development work. They have just released, I think, 20,000 square feet of one of our main buildings here, which is just coming up. They are planning, I think, to employ there up to, I think, initially 1,000, then 2,000, 3,000, they think even maybe up to 5,000 young people. And they are actually taking people, students from high school, and paying for their education in IT, giving them scholarships, and then bringing them into their staff. I think that kind of model is very interesting. And in fact, with this HCL coming in, there have been several other high-end and top software development companies in India expressing interest in Sri Lanka. So I think, I mean, you asked about education, but this is maybe a way where it can become, relevant immediately. What the model that HCL seems to be using, and I'm hoping some of the other big IT companies that are planning to invest now, I understand there are two of them, two of the biggest also interested, and I think that should happen in the next month or two. Hopefully they would follow the same approach. But the education, the scholarships that are offered by you, I visited with ICCR, and we have discussed the idea of increasing the number of scholarships of Sri Lankan students being able to come into Sri Lanka, into India, and that is happening. And I think from what I can see, ICCR is willing to, we are quite open on that. Looking at new sectors like IT training, but also the traditional sectors. I mean, you put the Sanskrit language, Pali language. I mean, there are other aspects as well. And it's amazing the amount of interest in those areas that I've seen young Sri Lankans having. Of course, we have to look at the employment opportunities for them here as well once they come, or, opportunities for them to actually use those skills. So I think, I mean, I agree. I mean, education is one of the key areas.
Thank you, Ambassador. Before I come to Professor Vaidyanathan, Hariharan sir, could I ask you to please mute yourself, if you don't mind? Kindly mute yourself, sir. Hariharan sir. Thank you, sir. Professor Vaidyanathan, of course, is here. He's associated with our school. Sir, please go ahead. So you'll have to unmute yourself, sir.
Questions to the ambassador. One is regarding the Easter bombing, and there were some reports suggesting that they had links with some TN elements or Kerala elements and other. I'm sure you are investigating it, and some thing is going on. Even though 90% of the Muslims, I'm given to understand, in Sri Lanka speak Tamil, they don't identify themselves as Tamils. This bombing, do you visualize it as one-off type of thing, or Is there a concern about it on a longer term? That's one. Second is there are many reports suggesting this Hambantota is becoming a separate conclave, and it is city of China and other thing. There is a like Hambantota, Djibouti, and the Kavadar, the triangle type of thing. And is it really so? Is China is having more than what you may loosely call a acceptable interest? Recently, I think you would have read report about Chinese ambassador going to Yalpanam and interacting with Tamils and other thing. So there is some amount of concern about the influence of China. Is Hambantota really a conclave? Namely, there are some, of course, unverified report which says you require a Chinese visa to enter into Hambantota itself. I do not know how much they are, but there is a significant amount of because in the context of China having certain other strongholds in like Djibouti, for instance, and Entebbe even that they have taken over. So in that context, so these are the two observations or questions I would like to pose to the ambassador.
I think on the first one, on the Easter bombings, I mean, the security agencies of the two countries are cooperating very closely on this, and that relationship, as I mentioned earlier, is excellent from what I understand. So I think whatever investigations that are taking place and what is being done, that is ongoing. On radicalization, always there is a threat and a risk of any type of. I mean, Sri Lanka has dealt with all different types of radicalization. I mean, we have had the most recent being the Easter bombings. Before that, we have had the LTT and related aspects there. And even in the south of Sri Lanka, we have had very radical Sinhala elements. So we, as a small island, in some ways, I think we have got more than our share of radicalization if you look at our post-independence history. So anything we worry about, we are sensitive to, and so we should be, because we need to understand. As best as we can see, this particular incident was restricted to one network. There was a family and associated network. But clearly, there were radicalization elements in that, which could sometimes be also used in, or maybe expanded. So yes, there is attention being paid to that, because given our history with different forms of radicalization, we can't take anything for granted. On this Chinese footprint issue, I mean, I mean, as of now, there is no security presence of Chinese here. I mean, your story about the visas and Hambantota is a commercial port, and you get, I think, Chinese-run ports all over the place, including in Australia and elsewhere. I mean, there are Chinese managing ports, and the Chinese also manage a terminal in Colombo, the CICT. In my view, when it comes to the ports, the natural fit is India. I mean, if you look at Colombo port, in my view, if a company like Adani had existed in 2006, they would have probably been able to get the CICT port that the Chinese are running now, the terminal in Colombo. Because it's a natural fit. Because if you look at 80% of our cargo coming into Sri Lanka is transshipment cargo. Only 20% comes into the country. Of that 80%, 70% is transshipment into India. So in an economic sense, our basic business model is supplying India, transshipment. Now, interestingly, of that 70%, 35% goes to Adani-controlled ports in India. So in a way, this, in my view, Colombo port will naturally feed India. That's where our business is. When it comes to Hambantota, it's more complex. It is because it is not a transshipment hub. So it has to be an industrial port. Yeah. So there is a hinterland that is to be developed with an industrial park, which also the same company that is China Harbour company, which is involved with the port city, is trying to develop as an industrial hinterland. It is a commercial proposition. It's an investment. Of course, given the nature of the power play in this region, the Chinese presence can be looked at differently. In that context, I think our dialogue with India is what is important, to build the trust and to understand each other, and maybe have some sort of red lines which we both sides will not cross. Those understandings are what we are trying to develop. I think as long as that is there, we should be able to move forward. Because nobody has told us, definitely India has not to accept Chinese investment. Chinese investment China is one of the biggest investors in the world today. But as long as I think the investment does not create any strategic issue for India, we should be able to entertain that investment. So I think that's how it is working. Some of it is learning by doing, no doubt. I mean, that's happening. As far as the rest of it, the theatrical aspects of it you are referring to, I mean, that's I suppose, par for the course today. But in my view, the better the dialogue we have, the more transparent the dialogue we have, the more candid the dialogue we have, the less likely it is that we will have misunderstandings. And if in my short term, if I can create that kind of atmosphere, that kind of culture between the two countries, I think then we would have made progress.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Professor Vaidyanathan, and thank you, Ambassador. We come to, I think, a last set of questions. Kritika, would you like to introduce yourself and ask a question?
Very good afternoon, sir. My name is Kritika, and I am from School of International Cooperation, Security and Strategic Language, Rashtra University. Sir, I have 3 questions for you. First, how do you see the role of Buddhism in India-Sri Lanka relationship now? As a few days back, the Dalai Lama addressed Buddhist, monasteries more, and he said India is a very inclusive democracy. So, how do you see that the role of Buddhism in our relationship? And the second is that now Sri Lanka is trying to
I'm not hearing you that clearly. Is there a way of hearing a kind of an echo?
Yeah, Kritika, I think if you could just speak into the mic a little more.
Okay.
And please repeat the first question as well, if you don't mind, please.
Okay, sir. Am I now clear?
Now clear, yes, now clear.
Okay. So my first question is, how do you see the role of Buddhism in our relationship, in the India-Sri Lanka relationship? Now, a few days back, the Dalai Lama addressed a meeting in which he said that India's democracy is an inclusive democracy. So how do you see our relationship in context of Buddhism? And the second one is, as now Sri Lanka is trying to go for full organic agriculture or using organic fertilizer in agriculture, and it has created some short-term problems, security questions. So how do you see India can assist in this dream of Sri Lanka going full organic agriculture? And the third is, you just said about radicalization. So do you think that after Easter bombing incident that happened, do you see that the radical groups that were present in Sri Lanka in the time of civil war, is there any possibility for them to rise again?
On Buddhism, of course, I mean, the relationship between Sri Lanka and India, as I always say, is one of the main defining parameters is Buddhism. Because, I mean, as far as all of us are concerned who are Buddhist here, consider that that was the greatest gift India gave us. And the respect we have for India comes from that. And for any Buddhist in Sri Lanka to visit the holy sites, including Bodh Gaya, at least once in their life, many do it more often, is considered to be the real blessing. So that natural connection is there. On the organic fertilizer issue, yes, I mean, we are experiment. It's an experiment. It's a challenging experiment, no doubt. But equally, the situation in Sri Lanka was that we had the chemical fertilizer has created many different health hazards here, kidney diseases, various. It has been quite our water table that got affected. So our president felt strongly that there should be a more aggressive approach to carrying this transition, and in that context, India has supported us with nano fertilizer as well. I think we have, as of now, it's a day by day. I mean, we are learning from what we are doing, and we are trying to make the changes. But it is important that we do this transformation or the transition quickly. That's what we are trying to do. But it has, I mean, in certain places we may have gone too fast, in which case we are pulling back. I mean, the president is personally leading that initiative, I think this was something that is not new to this administration. The previous president also was quite concerned about it, because in certain parts of the country we have had increased kidney diseases also because of this. And I noticed when I was in Bihar, in some parts of Bihar as well, this problem of chemical fertilizer affecting the water table, affecting the soil. There were very serious issues connected with that, and I found that interesting as well, because talking to people there, what they were trying to do to try to move from chemical fertilizer to organic fertilizer, I think we have lessons we can learn from that. I mean, there is a debate here. Some people feel that we should have maybe done this in a slower way, that there should have been more test bedding done, more pilot projects done. Others feel, no, this has to be done, quickly rather than doing it incrementally. That debate is very much alive here. If you open the newspapers here, watch television here, it's a very emotional subject. I think, which approach is right, only time will tell. But it is an area where India and Sri Lanka have also been able to work together. You have provided your experts here. They have come here to look at how this nano fertilizer is being applied. You also have, we want to have some ongoing programs. In fact, your High Commissioner and I discussed that to see how we can have an ongoing relationship on exchanging experiences between what is happening in India and what is happening here. Then on the Easter bombings and the radicalization issue, I think it's important. I mean, it's not. I have done a fair amount of work even through my foundation on reconciliation and also on interfaith dialogue. And I feel it is, we need to work on that, because we cannot, I mean, even if a small part of a community feel left out, we have to try to understand why that is. On one side, we cannot tolerate extremism. So the law enforcement side, the intelligence agencies, the security agencies have to be alert, have to be proactive. So that is one aspect. But I think equally, we have to try to get to the root causes and try to understand why these things are happening. As a politician, I always say, sometimes we may have failed. Because if radicalization has taken over, that means democratic politicians have failed. Because the law enforcement has to take place, clearly, that needs to happen. But as democratic politicians, we have to try to understand why are these things happening. Now, I mean, when I was in active politics, I was in a very much a multicultural constituency where we had Muslims, Tamils, and Sinhalese and different religions living together. And maybe to some extent, we who have been in politics in Sri Lanka and even elsewhere, I guess, we have also failed in not understanding the pulse of our electorates. Because sometimes we only look at our base, our tribe, whatever that is. We don't go beyond that. So I think there is a lot to be done there. So while the security aspects are being addressed, the radicalization aspects from a security lens are being addressed, I think the politicians have to start trying to understand why this type of thing has happened. Now, very clearly, as I said before, this particular incident seems to have taken place within a certain network, but potentially there is scope for radicalization as well, further radicalization. So I think the democratic establishment now has to understand and try to see how we make everybody feel included. and not excluded. And as democratic politicians, sometimes we are good at excluding people who don't support us or who are not with us or who are not like us. So there are lessons to be learned there, I believe, and we need to work on that. And I mean, there are many people in Sri Lanka who are working on different initiatives to try to when it comes to reconciliation, interfaith dialogue. I am been doing some work myself on that. And I hope that through processes like that, we can maybe ensure that another incident like this does not happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Mr. Sirola has been waiting very patiently. Sirola, sir, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for your insightful discussion, sir. And basically, my question was pertaining to the Chinese presence in Sri Lanka, and which you have already answered to the question raised by Mr. Vaidyanathan. So I will ask you in a different way that how important is the this Vinjinjam port, that is international seaport established by Adani Group in Kerala. So how important is this particular port for Sri Lankan trade, and how this will play to neutralize the effect of this Chinese presence in Sri Lanka?
Well, I think my view is the speed at which India is growing. Firstly, the role of Sri Lankan ports have been that we provide deep water ports for the South India and or even further afield. So what you have are that you have, for example, if you look at whether it is any of the four terminals, the three terminals now, and the Adani terminal, the fourth one when it comes in, any of these four, what happens here is you have a deep water terminal, so the big ships come there, and then where you have the other small ships that take the cargo to India, to the subcontinent. And then you have it in reverse. You have the smaller boats coming in and coming into terminals, let's say in Colombo, and the loading onto big ships. So that's what our role is, that we provide some of these deep water terminals. Now, there is an initiative to build deep water terminals in India as well. My own personal view is there is enough to go around. The speed at which you are growing, India is growing, there is enough to go around. And I think that's the view of many observers. In fact, the interesting factor is each of these terminals in Sri Lanka, when they were built over the last 15 years, 20 years, they have been filled to capacity long before they were estimated to reach capacity. And that will happen even with the new terminal coming up. The reason is you have been growing so fast. So my view is that there is enough to go around, and I think the sort of the strategic play that whether you should have more deep water ports in India and around India to countervail, if you will, Chinese presence in Sri Lanka and so on and so forth. I mean, obviously being a Sri Lankan, I would want to think that way. But my own feeling is that the way it is going now, you will see more investment in Indian investment in ports. You will see that, and with that, I think also you will be more comfortable. I think the Adani investment is the beginning because he is the biggest in that business. In fact, my view, as I said, is that in 2006, if there was a company like Adani Ports, they would have invested in Sri Lanka at that time. But what happened was when Sri Lanka government asked for a call for international proposals, it was only the Chinese company which actually bid for this. Because it makes a business sense for investment to take place out of India. I mean, it makes a lot of business sense. So I think we would see that. Because on this footprint issue, what I find is that there are so many areas where there is complementarity and synergy between India and Sri Lanka when it comes to economies in every aspect. It will be natural that when India grows, that we will be able to immediately integrate with you. So my feeling is time will basically make us feel more secure with each other. Let's put it that way. And these will be more sustainable models because these are business models that work. These are not artificially created strategic models. I mean, these are business models. And I see the Indian private sector being very proactive. I mean, if you look at in the property sector, property development sector, India is one of the biggest property developers in Sri Lanka. But nobody talks about that. Everybody is talking about the Chinese footprint. But if you look at ITC, they have just invested about nearly $400 million in building their main hotel, and a hotel outside India is going to be in Colombo, to be open next year. There are other big property developers from India who are active in Colombo. But everybody is talking only about the Chinese footprint in that area.
So the reason is most of the trade is from the sea route.
Yes.
So that is the volume of the trade is mostly through the sea route. So that is the main reason for.
No, that is true. But if you look at the Colombo port, as I gave the statistic of it, I mean 70% is cargo into India, 80% is transshipment, 70% of that 80% is into India. So basically, Colombo port is feeding India, nobody else. I mean, when you look at it, the trade flow there. Then when you look at our railway networks, I mean, you have done, the Northern Railway was constructed by India. You have made a huge contribution to our railway network. And then I jokingly and maybe even flippantly sometimes say the tuk-tuks here, the three-wheelers, we have over 1 million tuk-tuks in Sri Lanka. It is the backbone of public transport in this country. The trucks, they are all Indian. So, I mean, you can, okay, the highways were built by Chinese maybe, but the rest of it that is running on it are Indian. So, you know, these two economies will come together. 10 years from now, we have this discussion. I think we will be talking on a different footing.
Definitely. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Ambassador. We have one question from Nigar Sultana. If you could just be brief and introduce yourself. Nigar?
Namaste. Yes, sir. Namaste, everyone. So can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
Yes, sir. So first of all, I want to welcome sir in advance because I belong to Odisha. I'm from the Fakir Mohan University, Balashore, Odisha. Okay. Yes, sir. And so my question, I think it is some theoretical perspective. My question is, in international relations, the navigating factor always is the national interest. So, sir, I just want to understand that how complex is for Sri Lanka to justify its position between India and China, as we are putting more stress upon the people-to-people relation is the cultural relation, but economy and security is also a very determinant factor. Mainly after this COVID pandemic, we can't make them aside. In context of balance of power in South Asiatic region, how you see the way forward? Because the strategic positioning, the geographical strategic positioning of Sri Lanka. I just want to know it from Sri Lankan perspective.
So you are saying the strategic position of Sri Lanka vis-a-vis India and China?
And China, yes, yes. How it will balance the situation between these two countries?
But I think we are too small to think of balancing anything, but we have to...
But sir, the positioning, its positioning makes it much more important for both of these countries.
I mean,
yes, sir.
It is, we have to basically, I mean, I'm somewhat philosophical at the beginning of this discussion when I mentioned when this idea of elephants in the room came up. I remember when I started my career in many ways in politics and as an advisor to politicians, the relationship between India and Sri Lanka, some of the issues that came up had to do with the United States, because that was at the height of the Cold War, and President Jayawardena then was perceived to be more closer to the United States. And there were consequences as a result of that. This is our relationship. We had a very difficult period between India and Sri Lanka. Today, the strategic paradigm has changed. It's a different situation. And we can't change that. I mean, we couldn't impact the earlier paradigm, nor can we impact this. Today, India and the United States are close, and China is the rising power, I guess. So therefore, we have to. That's the hand that is dealt. Now, what can we do on one side? I mean, we have had relations with both. I mean, I think the best example of this has been put in a very, it's typical of Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa. Our Prime Minister is very pithy in his comments. He was asked about this once, and the Prime Minister said, China is our friend. China is a very, very close friend. But he said, India is our brother and sister. And I think that is how we will handle this relationship. India is our brother and sister. China is our friend. So how do you deal with our friend? How do you deal with our brother and sister? So I think I'll answer that with Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa's comment. That's, I think, will be the approach for the future.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. I think you would agree that the initial objective of having a more sort of exhaustive interaction has been fulfilled, in the sense that we've gone on now for an hour just with the discussions. I'm also extremely happy, of course, to tell you that this is, we've had almost about 55 to 60 people join in through the course of the conversation, and we've tried to put together a diverse crowd. We've had students and colleagues from the university, and of course experts from outside, representatives of the media, and hopefully some of these questions and points that they have raised has given you a fair indication of or a sense of how we've sort of taken the interaction forward and what sort of feedback has been there. Because what we've tried to do is spread the document that you had forwarded to us to almost everyone before the interaction. I would like to stop here, Ambassador, unless, of course, anyone would like to, I don't know whether Professor Satyamurthy or...
Yeah, I was wondering, Professor Satyamurthy, you have not interviewed.
Yeah, I've been actually constantly looking at his this thing, but for some reason, sir.
Sure, I will join. Thank you. I am honored. I am honored.
Sir, your camera is off,
thank
sir.
you, Dr. Venkateshwaran.
Sir.
And thank you for that excellent, comprehensive presentation. And more importantly, it was very as forthright as it comes to Mr. Milinda Moragoda always. And as you pointed out, in every aspect of bilateral relations between India and Sri Lanka, there is a future to it. And the past was not the right path, and the present, we are just managing the course of events. In that context, definitely yes. Your paper itself is a guiding factor that both nations can, and particularly the civil society, academics, and others should work on. And as you rightly point out, and unfortunately some of our, people who asked the questions didn't get the idea, we have to look at the positives, leave the negative to the government to handle. And as a civil society, we should be looking at what we can do at our level. And I don't think we can do anything much on the correcting the negative. That is a policy based on policy decisions. To that end, sir, what are your immediate action plans? Of course, you have cited the long-term plan that you can carry forward, and also you may be leaving a legacy for your successors to take forward. And I think you are already doing a great job of it. Then where do we go from here in the short term? Particularly in correcting the misconceptions and the trust deficit. My own suggestion was the reference, what President Mahinda Rajapaksa, now Prime Minister, used to say even when he came here before the presidential election there, I think it was in 2019, he suggested there should be a triumvirate on both sides who alone should talk about bilateral issues at the government level. Personally, after seeing some of the statements, for instance, on Trinco, different sections of the Sri Lankan media is quoting the same minister in multiple ways as Sri Lankan media. So I think, would you like to take forward that idea with both governments? Because, and another thing I know from personal experience, there's a lot of misconception about Tamil Nadu, not only in Sri Lanka, but also in the rest of India. Their contribution, or whether, as you would have understood by now, Tamil Nadu government for the past so many years has not directly dealt with Sri Lanka or Sri Lankan issue. The government of India, whether it is a fishing issue or the ethnic issue, government of Tamil Nadu and the political parties in Tamil Nadu talk mainly only to the government of India. And unfortunately, the section of the Sri Lankan media and a lot of Sri Lankan politicians have a misconception on the fishing issue, for instance. Until very recently, I hope it is not so now, many people in Sri Lanka, particularly politicians, think this is because some ministers in Tamil Nadu have a fleet, fishing fleet of their own, and that is why they are doing it. This kind of misconception needs to be nipped in the bud, and it can be done only by fellow politicians and knowledgeable people like you, who can interact freely with every section of the Sri Lankan society also. Unlike your predecessors, most of them who were diplomats who had their own training-based limitations. Your comments, sir.
Well, Professor, thank you for that very insightful intervention. On the follow-up aspect and the troika, the triumvirate idea, we have been trying to, even this document refers to the fact that the strategic dialogue, we have to have some kind of a structure. So I'm hoping that in the coming months we can look at a model. The troika model served us well during the war period. As you well know, you covered that period and you wrote about it as well. Now the question is whether that exact model is valid anymore, or whether we should be looking at another framework. But we definitely are trying to find a framework for strategic dialogue. We have the joint commissions, which are sort of the standard template, and that can continue because the joint commission will cover the economic side, the trade side, the sort of the routine aspects. And Foreign Minister G.L. Peiris, we hope, will visit Sri Lanka, visit India in the first quarter at some point, and we will hopefully have a joint commission meeting at that time, with Dr. Jayashankar on the other side. But the strategic apex for a strategic dialogue is something we are working on, and I hope we'll be able to identify it. We have also been discussing it informally with India, and India is also giving thought, because you have different models when you deal with, let's say, with the US, with Russia. You have various models. You have the 2+2 model also that is being used, I think, with the United States and with Russia. But in the neighborhood, you still haven't developed that kind of structure. So we are trying to find out, what could be possible. So I think you are very right. We have to, we really need to work on that. On Tamil Nadu, and as well as addressing some of the issues you mentioned, definitely, I mean, I have an idea, and clearly in the coming months, I will be, I think, moving in that direction. And when I do, I will definitely speak with you as well once I have laid out some strategy. I mean, I've only took over in September, so it's a short period. So I need to take it a step at a time. And but definitely, Tamil Nadu is important. I mean, that is, I mean, again, genetically we are connected there. We don't want to walk away from it. We don't want to ignore it. And as you say, a lot of the misconceptions have to be cleared. And one of the reasons I mentioned some of the cultural links, especially the Murugan Trail, the religious links with the Murugan Trail and the Shiva Shakti Trail, so on and so forth, was to also create that link. The Murugan Trail also goes to the south. As you know, Katragama temple is a Murugan temple, and that is the temple at which Tamils and Sinhalese all worship. I mean, for all of us, it's holy. Tamil Nadu and us, I mean, we have so much in common. There is no question about it. And I personally, my wife and I enjoy traveling there, and we have done that. And that misconception has to be avoided, this stereotyping and also the demonization. I think there is mutual demonization sometimes between certain elements in Tamil Nadu and elements in Sri Lanka, especially in the south. So that we have to remove that fear and insecurity. And I hope to try to do that. So let me see. I mean, I'm not saying I'm going to succeed, but at least make a beginning of it. But thank you for that intervention.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Hariharan sir, I think you had something to add in briefly.
Yeah. Firstly, I thank the ambassador for the frank discussion, which is very rare, I find. He has tackled all the issues. Thank you, sir. I have only one suggestion. You see, in the past, we have so many projects have floundered because they are not time bound. As you are a management trained man, and you had been a businessman. You know very well time is the one that makes a difference in the quality of life. The relations will improve if there is a time bound projects. This is where the Chinese score. I am not pointing out that whether India or Sri Lanka has failed in time-bound project. But when you come to decide on a project, it must be time-bound. I find this is a South Asian failure. So I hope you would focus on prioritize and do that. All the luck.
Thank you. No, that's very good advice. And actually, that's one reason why I think we have to encourage businessmen to get involved more. Now, I'm quite sure that Adani Ports will make sure that that port terminal begins operation when it should operate, because they are, when they invest. Similarly, I find companies like ITC now, by the end of next year, I think they will be opening. HCL, the private companies do that more, and we need to do the same. I think with the joint venture on the tank farms, for example, we have to have a time-bound program. You know, we have to do that. I mean, that's you are very right. That's very important. Thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Ambassador. I believe there is a comment. There's a comment left in the chat box by Mr. Kishore Babu, who's editor of the World Focus journal for almost about 45 to 50 years. And I think this is in reference to the question on Sri Lanka and how it approaches India and China. I think he has, his question seems to indicate that it also depends on the kind of agenda, reciprocal agenda that might exist in terms of what each country expects when it is contributing to Sri Lanka. So if that can be kept in mind when we strengthen relationships, I think that's what he seems to indicate, Ambassador. Final, of course, I think with the set of questions, we'll stop here. Request, yes, Anand sir, would you like to make a comment?
Yes, sir. Sorry, because I could not attend this very important event, but I am very much thankful to Sir, His Excellency Asoka Milinda Moragoda from Sri Lanka, and all the dignitaries of the international relations. Since I am from the law background, on the basis of your lecture, I can say that this kind of event would definitely achieve the very lofty ideals of the RRU, the object of the RRU, because relation from one country to another country matters a lot. But certain policies that is under the pipeline due to the region whatsoever is, that must be resolved with amicably attempt and the endeavor. If you see about the Sri Lanka, it has a very deep relationship from India to Sri Lanka. In the epics also, when Hanuman went to Sri Lanka, then the Sri Lanka's people, they said, Nai shees kar vinay bahuta, neet virodh namari dhuta. This very line has been explained in the Ramcharitmanasa. It shows the very cultural and the moral values of the Sri Lanka. So I am very thankful to sir for sparing time on this very important event. I also convey my heartfelt thank to the School of International Relations and the Languages, Sri Dr. Venkateshwaran sir, who is heading this school, and from the very first day since its inception, he is bringing very even important dignitaries of intellectuals. So this place has been become an assembly of the intellectuals through virtual platform. Because of this corona pandemic, they could not bring such dignitaries in person. And Vaidyanathan sir once visited in 2019-20, if I'm not mistaken. So this place has been become an assembly of the intellectuals. So thank you all. And we have Satya Murthy sir on the basis of the title in this pictorial form. I can guess some dignitaries. Ramani sir is here, Hariharan sir is there, Anup Kausik sir is there, Kritika. So all of you spare time for this valuable discussion. Thank you once again, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Tripathi sir, for always, sort of guiding us along the way as part of the university leadership, of course. Ambassador, I know this is now stretching time, and you have been very patient with us. I would request, of course, the architect of this entire interaction, Mr. Heblikar, who's been sitting very quietly ever since the formal interaction began. I would request, sir, if you could please kindly add in a few words. Maybe the cherry on the cake.
Venkat, firstly, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak a few words. I must say I was looking forward to this interaction. Having known Mr. Moragoda for the last 20 years and the kind of synergies he brings to the table, I thought what better opportunity, what better person to interact with us, to bring focus to some of the most interesting aspects of the India-Sri Lanka relationship. And I think when I was in Colombo and I used to meet him very often in the course of my work, he had coined the word, a sentence. He said, Sri Lanka sees India more as an opportunity rather than a threat. I think we have come to a place where now opportunities abound, and I think he perhaps is here at the right time to navigate towards the better side of the ocean. The other thing is that he has, I think, underlined the need to remove the veil of misconception or misperceptions that exist. For example, I have always said, why are we so worried about the Chinese footprints in Sri Lanka or in Myanmar or in Bangladesh? We need to be creating our own footprints. We are not in a position to compete with the Chinese. Let us build on the strengths we have. I think the strengths we have in these countries are much more than what we can see happening with China. I think to that extent, Mr. Moragoda's interaction today, I think he's been on the job for the last 70 minutes. And I think he's cleared the air on many subjects. But I'm sure that, like what Mr. Tripathi said, that there will be more occasions like this where we could have his coming to talk to us and trying to make it even more clear that on his watch, Sri Lanka will be a better place to look at, and like we say, investments, opportunities galore. And I think Sri Lanka, by the size, one should not be determined to the kind of bonhomie that exists between the common person of two countries. There are two suggestions that I would like to offer. One is, when I was in Colombo, we had suggested that we set up an India-Sri Lanka Parliamentary Friendship Association. India has some 16, 17 such associations. And I think it would be a wonderful idea that we have parliamentarians from both sides interacting on each other's soil. Perhaps even looking at members of the legislative assemblies of India and Sri Lanka. I think there's a great need for politicians to understand. The civil servants in any case are doing their work. And I look at the other side, we need to have more interaction, perhaps under the various platforms that are available to us on the Ashoka Foundation or the India Foundation, we need to popularize Sri Lanka as one of India's closest neighbors, closest partners, and a friend who has stood by us in many other occasions. So I think we would like to see you in Bangalore one day. Come and talk to us, where we have Bangalore is the Technopolis for India and South Asia. Do come. We would like to, use the opportunity to talk to us, convince the businessmen here with their deep pockets to put some money where it counts in Sri Lanka. Again, I thank you very much for having responded to my request, and I'm sure the rest of the people on the screen today would be very happy to have interacted with you. Thank you, sir. And thank you, Venkat, for the opportunity again.
Thank you for having arranged it. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Ambassador. I don't think I have enough words to thank you. First and foremost, despite your busy schedule, your commitments, I know you're possibly on a holiday and right now speaking from Colombo. You have taken out nearly 2 hours and spent time with all of us trying to answer all these questions. I think a wide variety of questions. I think one of the significant sort of observations that impressions that I had from your comments was how do we continue to maintain this interaction in order to build a certain degree of trust and transparency and accountability. I think that is something that we would like to take away from this interaction. And you did mention about your finance minister, I think, visiting Gujarat. I'm sure, sir, that you would possibly also be visiting us somewhere close by. And I'll take this opportunity. Of course, our one of our university leaders, the dean, is here. I'll take this opportunity to invite you to please physically visit us at the Rashtriya Raksha University. And we'd love to have a one-on-one physical sort of interaction with you. And how is it that the university can play a bigger role and facilitate strengthening people-to-people contacts, strengthening cultural contacts, strengthening, you mentioned education. I think definitely we'll have a very important role to play as envisioned by the Honorable Prime Minister. It was his vision to set up this university, and we are an institution of national importance, and we work under the Ministry of Home Affairs. So all of that is an advantage for us, Ambassador. I once again thank you for taking time out on behalf of the university, on behalf of our students, our faculty, all our experts who joined us for answering all our questions. And we hope to see you soon at RRU and Lawad. Thank you, sir. I don't know whether you'd like to have the last word here. Otherwise, we'll all log off.
Well, I'm honored that, and thank you for inviting me and also spending so much time in this discussion. I learned a lot and met some old friends also, which is great. I'd be happy to keep the dialogue with you as well, and let me know if there's anything I can do. And I think if each of you can take an interest in Sri Lanka, that is important, because unfortunately, I find each of you have so much to focus on strategically. I mean, Sri Lanka is not the most important question, the strategic question that India faces, and we are very aware of that. So the more attention maybe Sri Lanka can get from people of your caliber, I think that in itself is a positive step. And then, of course, Mr. Satyamurthy and, of course, Colonel Hariharan, please keep writing. That is important too, because we really need that. And thank you again. Thank you.
Happy New Year, Excellency. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year to all.
Happy New Year to all of you again. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Datesh. Thank you, Akshat sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Satyamurthy sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Kishore sir. Thank you. Ritika, I think we'll join on the other link.
Okay, now we can go now because Ambassador sir hasn't logged off yet. So we can go.
Yeah, we'll go to the other link, not this link. We'll log off and go on to the other link.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.